We have a really exciting panel today on cross-chain and cross-layer collaboration. So we're going to get some of these chairs set up really fast. But this is a really interesting panel because it brings together a lot of different companies that are working on cross-chain and cross-layer collaboration and doing it in different ways. So all the different concepts that Jeff mentioned during his keynote, you'll hear a little bit about how tokens and data and value are all interoperable with these technologies. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Marek, co-founder and CTO at Celo, Irene Wu, head of strategy at LayerZero, Victor G, co-founder at Manta Network, Austin King, co-founder at Omni Network, and our moderator today, Xiao from IOSG Ventures. Let's give him a hand, guys.
Okay, thank you guys. Today, our first panel is about, today we have so many layers, execution layers, roll-ups, like settlement layers, and we have different bridges, middleware, different platforms, how to collaborate with each other in a better way. So today we have four super powerful projects focused on different directions. So firstly, I'm Ray from IOSG Ventures. We are a crypto fund based in Singapore, based in Lisbon. We'd love to have introduction from your side, what background of your projects and what's your visions. Yeah, could you start first, Austin from Omni Network?
Sure. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. So I'm Austin, I'm one of the co-founders of Omni. And Omni was built for a pretty simple purpose, actually. It's just to get developers more users. So, we've seen a ton of activity on Ethereum over the past years, but now it's scaling with L2s, and that's fantastic now that we can give users cheaper fees. But the downside of that is the ecosystem's fragmenting in a certain sense. And so now when people build applications, if they want to give people cheap fees, they have to deploy on a single rollup, is what they're called. Omni makes it so that you can build an application, deploy it across all the rollups. So, it gives people the cheap fees of L2s, but you don't have to worry about the fragmentation that has been happening in regards to the rollup development in the ecosystem so far. Yeah, glad to have you all here. Can you just hold it closer?
Yeah. Hello? Hello, hello? Yeah, hello? Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Hi everyone, I'm Victor from Manta Network. What we are doing is actually really focused on ZK application. Right now, a lot of infrastructure using ZK, bridge and ZK EVM, this kind of scaling solution. But what we are focused on is more what if application developer DeFi projects or gaming project want to use ZK for have some KYC solution, credential solution, or fully on-chain game, hiding information game. All of these kind of things need to use ZK to hide information or proof information. We just build a network support these kind of things, and we have a universal circuit. This is kind of the technology. We abstract the existing circuit into different contracts, and so a Solidity developer, they don't need to learn all of this really complicated cryptography, and they just call contract, achieve new features. Yeah, that's what we are doing. We recently launched the mainnet actually yesterday, and we have around 250 contracts already deployed on testnet within past 2 months, and there's 200K addresses, 4 million transactions on the past 2 months testnet, and really looking forward to mainnet launch. Yeah.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for having me. My name's Irene. I'm head of strategy at LayerZero Labs. LayerZero Labs is the creator company of LayerZero, the leading omni-chain interoperability protocol, and then also Stargate, one of the most widely used native asset bridges. We're focused entirely on building cross-chain infrastructure. Thanks.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Marek. I'm one of the co-founders of cLabs, which is where a lot of the public goods works happens in the Celo ecosystem. Fun fact about myself, I was actually born in Singapore many years ago now, and grew up here and kind of went all the way through end of high school, so it's a pleasure to be back. And for those of you who don't know about Celo, Celo is an EVM compatible layer 1, transitioning to become a layer 2. Celo is all about building for the real world. So we have a lot of feature extensions to the EVM that make it possible to build really easy to use payment products and to interact with mobile phones really well. And then there's also a whole new, I would say, pretty interesting vertical happening on Celo that's focused on refi, which also has a lot of real-world interactions, which is also really exciting. Celo was the first chain to offset its carbon 3 years ago, and as a result, a lot of refi projects have come to Celo. But probably the most exciting thing right now happening in the Celo ecosystem is news that will land in an hour in Berlin. Which is going to be pretty exciting. There's going to be a fairly well-known browser company with 100 million users launching a payments product on Celo today. So I don't want to steal their thunder, but keep an eye out for some pretty exciting news coming out in literally just an hour or two.
Okay, thanks. So thank you guys for your introduction. So my first question would be from the beginning. I believe that we have seen that scalability is was the main problem of the blockchain infrastructure, and right now in this year, do you have different ideas that what would be the main challenges you have seen in blockchain host infrastructure stack, and compare with the initially when you've started your journey to start a company, do you think you actually solving the problem, or do you think it's still far away? There's a gap to actually reach the expectations from the outsiders. We'd love to know. You have different ideas, I believe, because you focus on different modules in blockchains.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think we're at one of the most interesting, at least in my experience. So I started building crypto in 2017. Back then, it was really just Ethereum at that point, and some other L1s were raising at that time, but Ethereum was the main production network. What we're seeing now is the Ethereum ecosystem has largely adopted a roll-up-centric roadmap, which effectively means that there's going to be sub-ecosystems within Ethereum that specialize in different things. They're all going to have different security models. They're going to have different forms of functionality, like Manta. And I think this is one of the most exciting infrastructural stages I've seen in crypto since I joined in 2017. So I think we're going to see a range of security models come out here, and people are just going to adjust to kind of working on these different platforms. But we're going to have a lot of the same tooling that comes across them. Like Manta, for example, has EVM, but they also have ZK functionality built within it. And so I don't think we're anywhere near kind of the end game of this. I think we're really just at the beginning, because the space is learning how to actually scale these to more mainstream adoption. Ethereum L1 was never going to be capable of that. That's just a simple reality that's been formally adopted into the roadmap at this point. And so I think, moving to L2s, Celo as well, I think is a really interesting project where you all you're making the transition now. And the L2 space, I think, gives us a ton of area for experimentation. And I think we're really just starting to understand that by enabling different functionality and also different data availability layers and stuff like that. So yeah, my perspective is we're just at the beginning. We got a long journey ahead of us. But I do think just even now we're positioning ourselves for a whole jump in the capacity to onboard, tens of millions more users.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, from our side, the interoperability mainly coming from how to combine the two network, because we have a layer 1 and layer 2, and also how to enable the social file credential to use in different other roll-ups or layer 1s, and also how to enable all of other chains application can have liquidity bridge into us. So that's kind of the idea. And also for on-chain game, that's just really right now deploy on us, but maybe it can have other liquidity on other chain as well to get more users.
I actually, just on my way over here, was speaking at NTU, which is the technical university around here, and afterwards a student stayed behind to ask why, in a very earnest way, would he interact with DeFi when he otherwise could just use his Visa credit card. And he sort of like walked me through it. But I so appreciated the really earnest question that we, or at least I'll say for myself, I, working this space every day, take for granted. I don't even really think about that. And yet I still use my Apple Card for most purchases. And so I think that we certainly have many layers of the stack we need to resolve for it to get there. And we are not yet at the place where it's both cheap, fast, and safe for users to transact with crypto. And I think that the ability to abstract away the complexities of individual chains is very essential to that. So the need for multiple gas tokens, for example, the need for multiple wallets, the high likelihood of churn when you're trying to complete one task, let's say, or like achieve some sort of value that you get from a protocol, but you have to go to 3 other protocols and use other wallets to accomplish that one thing. However much we can reduce that churn and adopt the best practices of Web 2 software development, which is get user from beginning to actual value as soon as possible is really key. And yeah, I do really want to give a hat tip to Celo because they were one of the earliest movers in thinking about where product market fit actually exists right now. And where it exists right now is often in nation states where there isn't currency that's properly pegged in their remittance needs, and mobile makes a lot of sense because the end users are not behind laptops in sort of office work settings, but often on the go in different service jobs and need to transact from their mobile phone. And so there are some very cool technical advancements that we're talking about right now, and we were talking about at ECC, but I often ask myself, when was the last time I called my childhood best friend, or when was the last time I spoke to my grandfather? Like, these are people who are real and doing real things, and not in skyscrapers talking about very esoteric infrastructure.
Thanks for the shout out. Yeah, I would say in terms of usability, we're kind of close, but not fully there, right? I think a lot of really interesting work happening on scalability. I think is helping a lot on scalability, but I think ease of use and the ability to on and off ramp easily are things that continue to lag behind. I think on ease of use, especially around gas currencies, Irene just mentioned the ability to pay for gas. I think account abstraction is going to make that across the whole industry a lot easier. On Celo, you can even do that with EOAs. You can pay for gas with tokens, which we found to be really amazing, especially for payment use cases, to just be able to send money and pay for the transaction fee in the asset that you're sending. Who would have thought that makes things a lot easier? I like to sometimes compare it to this idea in the US. We have Venmo, which is a nice P2P social wallet, and the idea that people would have to pay transaction fees in Venmo coin, this weird volatile asset that changes price every day, it just would be a non-starter for an application like Venmo. And so I think things like the ability to pay for gas with tokens are really important. But then the other final thing is on and off ramping. I think to use those examples that you just use, your grandfather and others who probably aren't going to have a Binance account. They're probably not going to use Binance P2P to cash in. We need to make it so that people can cash in trivially directly into Web3 apps, directly into mobile wallets, anywhere in the world. And I think that's something that the industry is taking on, but I think it'll still take some time before that will be commonplace. And there's a lot of work being done. If you're interested in this, I'm happy to chat about it afterwards.
Thank you. My next question, you guys just mentioned interoperability is also our main topic today. So my view is that right now we have so many stacks and modules and so many layer 2s. Even we have, when we mention ZK, even different platforms also use different ZK proven scheme. So I would assume that when you're doing a project, when you try to interact with different platforms, then there should be some efforts into making some standards, standardize everything. So from your views, do you think right now do you think it's a big problem to push your standards to let every platform to accept your standard, or you have different views to try to make a better way to collaborate with each other? We'd love to hear everyone your insights. Yeah.
Yeah, so at least the way we look at it at Omni is just really in terms of market adoption. Like what standards are out there today that have a ton of users and adoption and capital secured by that? Ethereum is probably the best one today. And so, my previous company actually worked on interoperability as well. But at that time, at this point, like 5 years ago, that was like state channels, like Lightning Network and stuff. Now, we have complete smart contract functionality with rollups. The main thing that we're focused on at Omni is using existing standards that have adoption, like Ethereum, to kind of take a new perspective on interoperability and building in these ecosystems. So Omni, for example, uses restaking to secure communications that happen across rollups. Our perspective is basically that all the users' activity and capital is on Ethereum. So let's build for the place that has all the users. And so the best way to do that is really, from a technical perspective, make it look as close to core Ethereum protocol as possible. And so that's why we use existing Ethereum validators to achieve that secure interoperability. So that's mostly how we look at it in terms of just like a pretty pragmatic, like what is working today and where is like growing, where should we build? That's Ethereum. And so that's why we build in like a very Ethereum-centric manner.
Yeah, I think, for rollup, like right now, it's kind of, there's a standard coming up, which is called OP stack. I don't think it's like the end game, but definitely a lot of like projects right now using OP stack. Maybe the early version or the current version, like, Celo, like us. But also, I think, we just find, from our perspective, we just try to work in a really practical way. We start to build the infrastructure, like, for privacy protocol specific, and then we find, like, when it's Go adoption, we find, if we want to have more and more, like, credentials, and it's actually need a better infrastructure. So we just find OP stack and with /DA, and then we just adopt that. But also right now we have more ecosystem using this kind of infrastructure, and we find maybe we can research on other better infrastructure. We are still exploring on that, on the ZK prover side, on the other scaling solution. But generally, I think it's more like based on the user feedback. That's something I take the same view with Austin as well. So. Yeah, I think it's step by step. It's far from, we really can say, oh, this is the standard. But in general, I'm more like, on the development side, I'm really thinking, Solidity for developer perspective, for application developer perspective, like Solidity is kind of a standard. It's really hard for builders, for application builders, really to learn like new language like Cairo or Noor or this kind of language to build ZK application. That's why we keep building things, on top of EVM, try to give Solidity developer new opportunity to build ZK application, then inventing a new language. Yeah, and also on DA side, it's still far from the standard, but we take different approach with Celo, EigenLayer and Celestia. I think it's really interesting. We will see how that goes.
I feel very lucky to be right in between two different ecosystems that we work very closely with in Celo and soon to be working very closely with Manta. One way that we have attempted to solve this problem of unified standards is by creating these two omni-chain standards called the Omni-Chain Fungible Token, or the OFT, and Omni-Chain Non-Fungible Token, or ONFT. And the adoption has exceeded all of our expectations. How it works essentially is it's an extension of an ERC20 or ERC 1155 or 721, and it enables seamless transfer between networks and native transfer as well. So rather than going through a wrapped asset bridge, for example, you can abstract away the whole bridge functionality, and the embedded LayerZero messaging within the contract handles the state between the token contracts on each of these different chains. And so a protocol could launch their protocol token as an OFT on both Celo and Manta, and users would be able to move their protocol token between those two networks without effectively bridging. There might be a UI for bridging or like a transfer functionality, but the effect is using messaging to manage the state between the two tokens. And so BTCB, for example, Ava Labs' version of Wrap Bitcoin integrated OFT and saw double of token supply and also velocity of usage afterwards. The Balancer token, PancakeSwap's Cake token, Trader Joe's Joe token, many of the new liquid staking derivatives as well are OFTs. So this is one way in which across many different ecosystems, the nearly 50 EVMs and non-EVMs we support, there is now unified liquidity for tokens.
That's pretty compelling. One thing that I think unifies all of us here on stage, is the EVM, right? I think ultimately the EVM is the ultimate standard. I think that so much of Web3 has aligned behind. Initially, as all L1s, but now, through the scalability roadmap that Ethereum has, through the roll-up-centric scalability roadmap, it's just really exciting, right? Like, I think the ability to write Solidity and have it work on all of these different chains and to interoperate, oh my God, with all of this amazing infrastructure that allows you to interoperate across these chains, like LayerZero and Omni. I mean, I think that's pretty exciting, and I think that's one reason why the space is moving at the rate that it is. I think if these were all disparate ecosystems with their own languages, with their own VMs, I just don't think it'd be moving at the rate that it is.
A follow-up question here for Celo and for Manta, because Manta usually recently you publish your own layer 1, your layer 2, like focus on privacy, and Celo you are trying to transmit to Ethereum layer 2 ecosystem. So we'd love to know your idea. Seems like from outsiders looks like right now you are more aligned with Ethereum ecosystem. Do you think we'd love to know more idea that compared with like 3 years ago, do you think right now that this movement can bring more benefits to your ecosystem? And the next question is that because you Manta focus on privacy and Celo, I believe I saw a lot of real world like digital economics, this kind of things. So after this movement, do you think there are any specific application segments that could be interesting in future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Celo's origin story is one that started in Ethereum. We tried to build basically a global Venmo, a global social payment wallet on top of Ethereum 5 years ago, and we couldn't make it easy enough to use for normies and your granddad to use, and that took us down the path of building our own layer 1 that was EVM compatible, but that had the features that you would need to build these types of applications. And so it's no surprise that, fast forward to today, now that there is an Ethereum scalability roadmap that uses rollups and L2s in order to scale Ethereum, that it would make sense for us to align ourselves with that roadmap, because it didn't exist back when we first started, but it exists today. And as an alt L1, we weren't really aligned with that roadmap. And so that was the thinking behind making the transition. And we proposed it earlier in the year at ECC, and the community was really excited about it. They voted 99% in favor, and so the proposal passed, and now we're busy working on it. And I think one interesting thing about making that type of transition from an L1 to an L2 is that we have a lot of stakeholders today that we have to think about, and we have a lot of constraints on what we can and what we can't do as we make this transition. And so that took us down the path of making sure that we could keep transaction fees low and using EigenDA for data availability. That took us down the path of creating a decentralized sequencer so that our validators today would have a role in this future network, and then also took us down the path of really trying to innovate and think about how we can create one block finality and offer that in the context of an L2, which hasn't really been done before. And in terms of kind of benefits to the broader ecosystem, I think if you're interested in building really easy to use mobile applications that really interact with people in the real world, and you want to do that as part of Ethereum, then now you've got a place to do that within the Ethereum ecosystem. Celo is a perfect home. And I think that's been pretty exciting for a lot of people. We've got a lot of inbound afterwards on that, and I think that's ultimately the biggest benefit for developers building on Celo today.
Yeah, I think basically we think the same in a lot of perspectives. But like from our side, we start from like only focus on DeFi privacy. So that's like the first initial product we want to do, and for that product, we need to start to find the interoperable infrastructure to build on top of it, and the different actually. We start really early back in 2020, to build a multi-asset privacy, network, and at that time, the only two interoperability infrastructure is Cosmos and Polkadot, and then we chose Polkadot, but it's just far from realized on the I think all of the interoperability side, because with the Ethereum goes, the ecosystem grows. There's really great, solutions like LayerZero, like Omni network, and we find, okay, what if we want to get more asset? What if we want to build more use cases and we want to build the ecosystem with more products? That's why we find that we still need to go to EVM, and we need to go to more native EVM, and that's why we build a layer 2. I think the result is pretty good. We have 50 ecosystem project right now on top of us, and there's a lot of unique use cases still in the EVM in our layer 2, because I think it's kind of really important. The big issue for building an EVM is what is the unique selling point for EVM. Like for us, it's ZK application. For Celo, it's refi, and but a lot of EVM don't know what they're doing besides the DeFi copycats. So that's why I think at least we have some, and we keep working on new use cases, and that's the the vision we are trying to achieve.
Thank you. For Austin and Irene, I also curious about when you kind of build up messaging layer that between different rollups, different layer ones, they have to some trade-off. You need to experience some contributors, for example, decentralization, security, in order to reach some expected attributes. So what would be the trade-off when you're building your infrastructure? This is my first question. And the second question, recently we also hear a lot of this narrative about intent-centric. Do you think is a new paradigm to you guys? Do you think this is a threat to your projects, or do you think you can also get some opportunity based on this new paradigm or new trend?
Sure. So to the first question of, I think the main difference, in terms of trade-offs that Omni accepts is, for a majority of crypto, interoperability is meant talking across chains. Omni facilitates interoperability, but within the Ethereum ecosystem. So one core trade-off that we accept is it only works with rollups. It only works with rollups that are within the Ethereum ecosystem. We're happy to make this trade-off because we're just deeply aligned with the values of the Ethereum ecosystem. And we think from just a practical business perspective, that's where all the activity is. So that's one fundamental trade-off that Omni takes on that LayerZero does not. For example, LayerZero has a wider access to chains that are out there, whereas Omni cannot connect Avalanche, for example. So we took this path just because of our team's kind of culture and the way that we see the business landscape progressing. And that opened up opportunities to do things like utilize a restaking network and get actual core Ethereum validators to secure the communications across rollups. So that's to the first question of trade-offs that have happened throughout time in the interoperability space. The second thing, intents, I do not see it as a threat. I think it's actually a huge opportunity that anything that operates across domains is really well positioned. If you think about it, an intent is we talk about it like it's a very academic thing, like intense. And, we can create like a very formalized language around this and stuff. But it's pretty simple. Like, user wants to do something. That's an intent. Like, we talk about it like it's academic, but that's all it is. A user wants to complete an action. And so when you're working across domains, there's this really nice abstraction barrier where a user can just declare, I want to do this. And then it can be totally abstracted from them. And so anywhere that is like getting one domain to talk to another is actually inserted extremely well to take advantage of this kind of like evolution in the infrastructure stack. So that's at least how we're mostly looking at it at Omni. And over the coming months here, you'll see more posted about this.
From the LayerZero perspective, we chose to be, or like our creator companies trade-offs here, where we chose to be less opinionated about particular chains, so we're entirely chain agnostic. Though I will say the first 7 launch chains were all within EVM, and I think that demonstrates our like founding team's background and where we had previously built before, and we of course remain very, very close with, and the majority of the chains that we connect and work closely with are within the Ethereum ecosystem, but are now beyond as well. And then in the architecture of how LayerZero is designed, another trade-off, though we see this as a feature rather than a bug, is modularity versus monolithic security buy-in. So rather than LayerZero forming an opinion about what the default security layer should be for all applications built on top, we designed it so that it was modular enough for each application developer to price their security along a line. That might mean that if you are building a game and you're transacting 5-cent NFTs, you may want to set your block confirmations incredibly low and price your security at the sort of default layer, which is already incredibly safe. But if you're Circle and you're issuing USDC and you'll be moving USDC between chains, hundreds of billions worth of value, you probably want to price it much higher. And if you design your cross-chain messaging layers so that it's monolithic, one team is wildly overpaying and another team is wildly underpaying. And so this was a thesis that we had, and we essentially leaned into the trade-off to build an architecture that not only can evolve with a particular project, but also evolves with research, meaning the way it's built enables us to launch new endpoints without forcing protocol-wide upgrades, and we can leverage new validation techniques.
Thank you. Victor, I think Manta is the only one project that focus on security and privacy, especially privacy in this panel. And we have also seen that after Tornado Cash, there's actually no product market fit opportunity, especially in Ethereum ecosystem. And I still wondering, because I think still a lot of people care about privacy, but we also need to face with regulated problem when we kind of build up the mixing transaction kind of protocols. So we'd love to know your idea. Why do you think it's still you just launch your new projects, two new platforms, and why do you think that this is still a good time to still start a journey about privacy?
Yeah, actually, we really focus on compliance from day one, even before the project. Before Manta, I have this idea about privacy projects since when I study at Harvard Kennedy School. We think privacy is a part of the human right, and I know ZK actually from there's a blockchain class I took at MIT called Blockchain and Money under Gary Gensler. So actually I took 1 year from him. He was teaching the algo stablecoin and what's the NFT and what's even the basis at that time. And I kind of know we actually did research about ZK KYC for MAS back that time, and I start to know more about privacy and how to build privacy for the central bank, and then in DeFi Summer we just make it more decentralized. But I think like it's evolving a lot on the regulation side after like he become the SEC chair. So we actually take more really conservative approach. Before we make it kind of more permissionless, and right now we recently this year we launched ZK KYC. We don't take any information, but if you KYC on Binance, you just automatically can use your Binance KYC and mint SBT on us and use this SBT to prove you are not people from Russian, or you're not like hackers from North Korea, and then actually you can use our protocol. So in this case, it's still compliance, and at the same time, we don't take any information. So it's kind of compliance privacy we talk about recently, and also like besides privacy use case, we are more general focus on ZK applications like fully on-chain game and how to use credentials to build other things like campaigns and NFTs and like using the like bigger use cases besides only like DeFi. Yeah.
Thank you. Today I have one final question. Anyone feel interesting to answer? It will be very interesting to hear your thoughts. But maybe I start from Marek, because before you have like Celo is a layer 1 blockchain. Right now you're building, you have your own layer 2. And recently there are also a lot of like discussion about how to build up a layer 2 token economics. And so we'd love to know your ideas. How do you like build a layer 2 token economic based on like we already have like a Celo as a layer 1 blockchain tokens.
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I think, first and foremost, a lot of the token economics in Celo today don't change under the L2 migration. Celo will continue to be one of the assets that you can use to pay for gas. You'll be able to pay also, obviously, with WETH, but also with the stablecoins and any ERC20 token that the platform supports today. One really nice way that we do this is by basically the base portion of the transaction fee gets put into a smart contract that anyone can then execute from, anyone can then call from time to time to convert those fees from those other assets into Celo and then have that Celo be burned. And so regardless of what transaction fees people are using, whether it's ETH or Celo or stablecoins, ultimately that will accrue value to the Celo token. And then of course governance will remain. Celo has full on-chain governance with the ability actually to execute governance proposals. This is fairly unique, I would say, in the broader Web3 space. And we've had this for 3 years, and that will remain. And so folks will be able to use Celo, stake Celo, and vote on governance proposals. There's a fairly large treasury as well that's held by the DAO that's governed by Celo holders, and so having an ability to take action on that treasury is, obviously also something that Celo holders can do. But beyond that, by becoming an L2, I think it opens the opportunity for Celo to become more than just one chain, to become multiple L2s, to be also a chain with L3s underneath it. This is something that we've had a lot of inbound interest from a bunch of different corporates. People are interested in our stack. They find the unique features and the extensions that we have on top of the EVM interesting to them. And so I think that's an interesting kind of avenue for us as well. I think in the future, Celo won't be just one chain. It will be a lot of different L2s and even L3s.
Austin, do you want to take this?
Sure. So my perspective on the tokenomics side of this is quite similar to my perspective on what is going to happen with the infrastructure here. Highly experimental. There's so much room to play around here. You can have a centralized sequencer. You can have a shared sequencer. You can have a different data availability layer. You can put it all on Ethereum. there's so much that you can do when you're building an L2 and experiment with. And all that really translates both to giving users different types of functionality and costs, but at each layer of that, you can have a token intertwined in an interesting way to make it like a more sustainable ecosystem at large. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for this personally. I think Celo has some really exciting opportunities ahead of them. Other roll-ups, especially as they kind of decentralize progressively here, I think we're going to see some really interesting designs on the tokenomics front, and I'm excited for it.
Okay.
We're less opinionated on the tokenomics of different layer 2s, but I am very, very excited by the thesis that, or the roadmap that you all have for multiple L2s and L3s.
Okay, I think this is all my questions today. Thank you guys. This is a great panel. Yeah, thank you again.
Thanks for
Thank you so
hosting.
much.
Thank you.